Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be creating some rudimentary armor for our character. So let's start with some plate legs. So I'm going to duplicate the pants object as a starting point for those. I'm going to move this over onto its own layer. And let me just select only that layer and the character layer. I'll quickly go into the shape keys and just turn all of these down to 0. Alright. Now, on this duplicated pants object, in the materials, I'm going to remove the pants material and create a new material called something like underclothes. So this is just going to be some sort of dark grey material that the character will wear under the armor. So something like that. And then I'll go into edit mode on this. Let's select faces, and I'm just going to Alt-Shift right-click to select some of these faces here. Shift-D to duplicate that, P and separate by selection. And I'll select that object, and this is going to be the actual metal part of the leg armor. So I'm going to remove the underclothes material from that and create a new material called metal. And I think I'm going to make this some sort of greyish purple. Alright, I'll now go into edit mode on this, just select everything, Alt-S, and just fashion it a tiny bit. Alright, I'll be careful that it doesn't go past the center here. And I want to shape this slightly, so let's go into vertex mode, and I think I'll enable proportional editing by pressing O. I'm just going to select either side of the top here, press G, and I'll scroll down on the mouse wheel to shrink the proportional editing a little bit. I'll drag this down just to get a sort of curve at the top here. And let me drag this up slightly. Alright, make sure that that doesn't intersect. And from the back, can shape this here as well. Alright, just something like that perhaps. And then over here, I'll select these two vertices, and I will drag these down so that at the front here it's sort of curving around the kneecap. Something like that. And I'll do the same thing for this lower part. Let me select these two, just drag those up. I might need to scale them a tiny bit as well. If you don't want it to affect this part of the armor, we can change the proportional editing type to connected, and now you can see it will only affect parts of the mesh that are actually connected to these two selected vertices. Alright, so something like that, and I'll do the same thing here, grab these, and just shape it a bit like that. Just basically trying to make it look as nice and armory as possible. Now, I'd like to have some metal in this region here as well to protect our precious kneecaps. So I'm going to Alt-right-click to select this edge loop, Alt-Shift-right-click to select the one below it as well, and Control-E to go into this Edges menu, and I'm going to choose the Bridge Edge Loops command just to fill in that shape there. And I'm going to press P, separate by selection, and select that new object. I'll then go into edit mode, and scale this up slightly, and also just shrink this at the back a little bit, like so. I'm basically just trying to give the illusion that some thought has gone into how this is going to actually bend as the leg bends. As long as it sort of looks like it might work, then we should be in the clear. Alright, let me go out of proportional editing here. I'm going to add in 2 edge loops, and let me just give this a nice bend around the knee. And maybe from the front here, it'd be nice if this is sort of a little bit pointy. That looks kind of cool. I would quite like this to be a sort of slightly darker color than the rest of the plate legs. So on this metal material here, I'm just going to press the plus icon, which is going to create a new copy of that material. And I'll call this metal_dark. And just make this a slightly darker purple. Something like that looks nice. Alright, and then I'm going to join these two objects back together with Ctrl J, and I want to give them some thickness. So in the modifiers panel, I'll add the Solidify Modifier, and let me just press Shift H to hide everything except these objects, so we can see what sort of thickness we're actually giving it here. Just something like that looks fine, I guess. And we probably don't need to render the insides of these plate legs here, so we can just say fill only the rim. So now we don't have any mesh in those areas that won't be visible. Alright, I'm going to press Alt-H to unhide everything, and now that we have that, I think we can just select this, apply the Solidify modifier, and then on the underclothes, I'm going to go into Edit mode, Face Select mode, and just in wireframe here, I'm quickly going to select these faces that won't ever be seen since they're concealed by the metal completely. I'll just press X and delete faces. Alright, can then select these two different objects in object mode, Ctrl J to create one object from that, and I'm going to go ahead and call this plate legs. Alright, now it's possible that we'll want to have these plate legs sometimes just lying around in the game world for the player to pick up. So let's press Shift H to see how it looks without the player. And I'd quite like to just make this top here a little bit less messy, especially considering that in Unity these back faces will be invisible, so you'd actually be able to see through the armor to the ground below. So I'm going to go into Edge mode and just fill in each of these edges here, like so. I'm going to press Ctrl R, add in a loop along there, and then just go into Vertex mode, select these two vertices, Alt-M to merge, merge at last. Alright, and then, let's see, I'm going to move these around to sort of make this look like a sort of leg hole. Alright, and then in face mode I'll select these four faces, go into the materials, create a new material, let's call this maybe just black, and make that very dark, and just assign there. Alright, so that looks like some sort of hole where you can slip your legs in, I guess. So that should be fine. Alright, and at the bottom here, I'll just fill in all of those. Okay, so now we just need to worry about how this is deforming. So I'm going to press Alt-H to bring the body back, and I'm also going to select the rig layer. Quickly go into the body and just enable the legs shape key there. And then let's try bending the legs and see how this looks. So getting some intersections over here, and also some weird twisting around there with this little sort of kneecap piece. So what I might need to do to fix this kneecap piece is just separate this onto a separate object quickly, and then in weight painting mode I'll select these two leg bones and just go into weights and assign automatic from bones. Alright, so that sort of part around the back there at least isn't twisting over itself anymore. And we can then just bring in our add brush here, and let's try getting this part to behave a little bit better. So I'll just add some weights around there so that it's folding back nicely. And I'll do the same thing on the lower half for the lower leg bone. Let me just up the strength a bit, this is taking forever. Alright, I think that looks quite good. I obviously don't like the intersection I'm getting here with the sort of lower part of the armor. Let me quickly just make this a single object once again with Ctrl J. And then I might just fix that intersection by, first of all, shrinking this part a bit here. So let me go into face mode. This is quicker. Select all of these faces, and maybe just Alt-S to shrink those in. And then also grab the vertices around here, Alt-S to make that, or maybe just S, make that a bit bigger. And hopefully now, when we bend the leg, it'll just sort of look like it's sliding over it instead of intersecting. So that looks nice. And from here, I just need to fix that slightly, maybe make that a bit thicker. Okay. Can probably solve the problem up here in a similar way, just by making this part of the armor thicker. So I'll grab some of these vertices and just move those out a bit. Okay, I think I am fairly happy with that for now. So, I'm going to reset the pose. And we can now get to work on the plate body. So I'm going to quickly show the shirt layer. I'll duplicate this and move the duplicated object over onto its own layer. And let's now disable these other layers and just show that duplicated shirt layer. Let me quickly get the legs back to normal. That'd be nice. And then on this shirt layer, which is going to become the plate body now, I first of all want to split this up into the sort of torso region and the arms region. Just going to handle those separately. So let me just quickly go ahead and select all of those. P, separate by selection, and I'm just going to hide that object for the moment. Okay, I want to change this to our metal color. And I want this to be sort of clearly split up into separate sections, as if it's made out of separate plates to give it a nice chunky feel. So in edit mode, I'm quickly going to come here and just straighten out some of these edge loops. And I might just position these slightly differently. All right, now I'll select all of these vertices here as the sort of first chunk, and I'll press E to extrude, Alt-S, and just scale that up a tiny bit. And then I'll come and deselect some of these. Maybe I'll just deselect those, and then press E, and after right-clicking to cancel, Alt-S to scale it up. So we've now got our 3 separate segments of the armor, and if we just want to have sort of slightly crisper shading on these, we can just add some edge loops near to the top and bottom of those ridges, just to define those a little bit better. All right, and I just want to straighten that out slightly. So that looks kind of nice. I might just want to move this whole section up a little bit. And maybe this one can come up slightly as well. Okay, something like that. And maybe just to sort of enhance the definition of these edges, go into face mode and just select these loops that run underneath. And we can add a new material here and set that slot to the dark metal, and then just press assign to assign that material to these selected faces. All right, going into vertex mode, I just want to quickly sort out these intersections with the arm here. So let me just bring this down a little bit lower. That seems to work fine. And I also, around the sort of loop here, because we extruded this twice, we've got these 3 sets of edge loops. So I would just want to remove this one in the middle here. So just X and remove edge loops. And we'll have the same thing around the neck. Just select that middle one and delete that as well. Okay, so let's bring back our sleeves object by unhiding that. I'm going to change the material here to underclothes. And I'd like to get some metal sections, one for the upper arm and one for the lower arm. So going into edit mode here. I'll go into face mode. I'm just going to select all of these faces actually. Shift D to duplicate, and I think I'll separate this onto a new object. I'll select that, and just Alt S to fatten this a little bit, and assign the metal material to that. Now on the bone here, I just want to make a note of where the actual elbow is, so where the arm is bending. I can hold D to bring up the grease pencil, and just make a little mark there by left-click dragging. Alright, so now going on to here, we can see where that elbow is. So I want to separate the two sections around there. So just selecting this edge loop, I can press a V to split that into two. I'll move this one to the one side, and this one over to the other side of that mark I made. And now that that's served its purpose, I'll hold down D and just right mouse drag to erase that. Alright, so let's just shape this bit of armor a little bit, and I can maybe cover up over here a little bit more. So something like that. And let me just have some fun with this lower part as well. Okay, I'll then also just extrude each of these edges in. So just extrude and scale. I suppose you could also apply a Solidify modifier for this, but I'll just do it manually. Alright, and I'm going to select all of these different objects and just Ctrl J to join it into a single object. Now I'd like to join up this edge loop to this edge loop. So I'm going to press Ctrl E and just ask it to bridge the edge loops, and then I'm going to select this middle one here and just X and delete edge loops. Now with these faces around here selected, I'm going to assign the dark metal to that, so we get something like that. Looks good. And then next I'd like to just create a little shoulder plate. So I'm going to come in here and select some of these faces, and Shift D, separate to a new object, and I'll just scale this up a tiny bit. And let me just give this some sort of shape. Or maybe extrude that out once over the shoulder there. And I should probably add a Solidify modifier to this, so we can give it some thickness. Alright. I don't really know exactly how this should look, but just something like that. Maybe looks okay. I might just add in some edge loops here to help out with the shading a bit. And I'm not sure if I want this to be in the dark color or not. Let's just give it a quick try. I'll assign that. Maybe just add some variety, I don't know. I'm just going to make this bulge out a tiny bit more. Alright, I think that looks okay. So let me apply the Solidify modifier, and I'll now join those objects together. And let's press Shift H to hide everything but this object. And we'll do what we did before with the plate legs, which is just make sure that this looks okay, even if it's not attached to the character and is just sort of lying freely in the scene. So I might, for example, want to just extrude this in a little bit and then fill that face. And I'll assign, let me create a new slot here, assign the black material to that, so it looks like that's a hole where you can sort of climb in. And I'll do the same thing over here. I'll just scale this in a little bit and then fill and just assign black to that face. Same story at the end of the sleeves, fill that and assign. Okay. It doesn't matter so much that these faces are made up of so many different vertices. It'll just get triangulated when we import it into Unity. So, I'm happy with the model. We just need to make sure that it's deforming nicely. At the moment, getting some rather awkward deformations, I think. So let's perhaps just try going into weight painting on this. I'll select all of the bones and just ask it to assign automatic from bones. Now, the main problem that I have with the deformations at the moment is just when I move this lower arm bone here, you can see there are some intersections going on up here. So what I'll just do is go into edit mode, select this top bit of the arm armor here, and just make sure that that in the vertex groups has no weight assigned to the lower arm bone. So I'll just remove, and then selecting the upper arm bone here and going into edit mode, I'll make sure that it has a weight of 100% on the upper arm bone. So now if I rotate this, that should be fixed. In the interest of time, I'm just going to leave the rest as it is, but I encourage you to go ahead and tweak that to your heart's content. I want to move on to the helmet quickly, but let me first select this object, and in the object data here, just call this plate body. All right, I'm then going to disable that layer and get to work on the helmet. So I'm going to start by adding in a cube, and in edit mode, I'm going to subdivide smooth this once, and then scale it down, move it up on the Z-axis, and just try and get this to roughly fit the shape of the head. So something like that. And I'm going to delete these bottom faces here so that it's open, and just scale that flat, so scaling to 0 on the Z-axis. And once I've done that, I'm going to select everything again and subdivide smooth once more. Alright, so that's looking slightly helmety. Let's quickly turn on smooth shading as well, and I'll assign the metal material, and I think this will be easier to work with if it's mirrored. So I'll select one half, delete those vertices, go into the modifiers, add a mirror modifier, and just enable the clipping there. Alright. Let me flatten the bottom here once again, and I'm actually going to do this with each of these edge loops, just flattening them like so. And then I'm going to straighten out the shape along the front of the face here, and then at the back it can be a little bit more shaped sort of around the outline of the head, like so. I'll add in a loop at the bottom here so it can sort of flare out a bit. Alright, and from front view we'll need to shape this as well. So let me quickly drag these around. I think that's starting to look helmety. Yep. Let me quickly select this, S, X, and 0, just to straighten each of these out. I think that's looking okay. Now, these faces over here, I'm going to ultimately be deleting. That will be the sort of open region of the helmet. But before I do that, I just want to press spacebar and search for inset faces. So I'll choose that command, and we can play with the thickness of that, but I'm basically happy with that. And go to delete just these ones on the inside here, delete those faces, and you'll see why I'm doing this in a moment. Let me just join that together there, bring that down, and I'm just going to maybe make this a little narrower and make it a little bit less rectangular around the eyes here. Okay, something like that. Then I also want to add in a loop near the top, just so that I can define a slight crest. So I'm just going to scale that up slightly, something like so. So I've got a little bit of a crest running along the back. And I don't want this to look too weird over here, so let me just touch that up. All right, and let me tidy this up, just scaling these to 0 to straighten them out. Okay, and I'll do the same with this very bottom one here. I'm going to add in one more loop along there, just to smooth out the flare a little bit. And now I'd like to go into face mode and just select these faces around here and along the crest and around the bottom. And I just want to assign the dark metal material to this. So I'm making a new slot, dark metal, and assign. Okay, so that looks kind of nice. Let me just touch that up slightly. And also want to have some thickness here, so let me add a Solidify Modifier. There we go. I think that looks helmety enough. Maybe make some last tweaks, a little loop along here. And just keep tweaking a little bit, not quite happy with the shape yet. Maybe straighten this out. And I think that's looking a little bit better. I'll move some of these in. And the top of the helmet's looking a little bit too low poly, so I'll add in another loop there and just fatten that out a bit, and then just move that up. Okay, that shape's looking a little bit better. So just going to quickly go into the object data, call this helmet. And because we didn't create this from the body mesh, we're going to have to parent this to the armature. So I'll go Control P, and let's just say with empty groups. And then we can go into weight painting mode, select the head bone here, and then in the vertex data, go into edit mode, select that, and just assign it to the head bone. All right, so the head bone moves and the helmet moves with it. Great. So let us move the helmet onto its own layer, and now we can select all of those layers, oops, and see our set of armor. Very quickly, I'd just like to set the origin points for each of these pieces of armor to their respective centers of mass. So I'm going to first go ahead and apply the mirror modifier on each of these, and then I'll select all three of them and press Shift Control Alt C and just say origin to center of mass, and you can see those orange points are now in each of their centers of mass, and so they'll each translate around that point. Okay, now the last thing I want to do this video is just correct a slip-up that I made last episode, which is that when we export this character into the Unity game engine, the shape keys that we have here aren't going to work while this mirror modifier is still active. So we need to apply that, but the frustrating part is that the modifier cannot be applied to a mesh with shape keys. So I'm afraid we're going to have to remove the shape keys that we created here, and then apply the mirror modifier, and then we'll have to recreate those shape keys. So let me show just the body, and I'll just go through the first one here again. So this will be the legs, and this is going to be easiest if we go into first edit mode, then into the options, turn on the X mirror, so that when I select all of these and Alt S to scale, the other leg will get scaled as well. All right, so I'll just set that up how I want it, something like that. And let's turn that slider up, and we'll test this out with the pants. So just want to make this as unnoticeable as possible. Let's bring the bones back and test this out with the run animation. So getting some intersections. I think I'm just going to fast forward through as I correct all of these and set up the other shape keys, because you've already seen me do this last episode. Alright, so I've got the shape keys set up again, and the armor is looking nice, so I'm going to be leaving off here for now. Until next time, cheers.